It's time for Go Veggie with Kay. Vegetarian cooking for your good health. Now, here's Kay Stepkin.
Hello, and welcome to Go Veggie with Kay. I'm Kay Stepkin, and we're here in the kitchen of Whole Foods Market in Evanston for today's program, with thanks to Count Stroganoff. We'll be cooking up a meatless stroganoff dish that's made with homemade, dairy-free sour cream and served over hearty whole wheat noodles. I'll also show you how to make a simple beet salad using that red root vegetable that was thought to give legendary Russian centenarians their long and healthy lives. And we'll make sweet but sugar-free apricot bars for dessert. And as always, we're here to show you new ways of creating good health through foods that will prevent illness. Well, let's get started with the Go Veggie Tofu Stroganoff version of the prize-winning recipe from Count Stroganoff Chef. It was good in the 1890s and it's still good today. We've got our water boiling. We're using fettuccine for the pasta. And I think I'll put some sea salt in the water to flavor up the pasta. If you just dump all the pasta in at once, it very likely will stick together and could permanently stick together. So as soon as the pasta hits the water, keep it separated. After I stir it in, we are going to cook this for 10 minutes. I'm going to use these tongs to keep this pasta separated. It'll soften up instantly here, and then I'll be able to get all the entire strands in the water. Okay, very good. A couple of times I'm going to just be sure that they're separated as we're making our sour cream. Oh, if you're one of those people, by the way, who think that they don't like whole wheat noodles, try a thin or a flat shape like the fettuccine we're using, or like linguine or a spaghetti. And that's what I did at first, is these thin, flat pastas cook up more like a white pasta. And now that I've been eating them for years, I enjoy all the shapes. And I find that the whole wheat pasta has much more flavor to me than that white stuff I used to eat. You're going to love this tofu sour cream. I'm going to start by putting the tofu into the food processor, followed by the next 4 ingredients: umabashi vinegar. Now, umi are a type of a Japanese pickle. They're very sour and salty, perfect for a sour cream-like flavor. A little bit of olive oil, dried mustard, and fresh garlic. We're just going to whiz this in our food processor. It will get as creamy as sour cream. Let's look at that. A little more. Almost ready. That looks creamy. I'm going to put it right back in the same bowl and then just stir in the dill. Just using a spatula to get all the sour cream out of the food processor. And with those 5 simple ingredients, we have a wonderful sour cream sauce. You can use it in other ways as well. You can put it on vegetables for a farmer's chop suey. Just going to stir this dill right in. And here's our tofu sour cream. Now, I've drained the noodles. Be sure that you don't rinse them after you drain them. This is an important tip, because rinsing it would make it more difficult for the sauce to cling to the noodles. Going to add some olive oil, fresh garlic. I think I will get it all out of there. About 6 turns of the black pepper, some fresh parsley. You could use flat leaf, but I've used the curly parsley. And then, the best part, a 1/4 cup of our homemade sour cream, tofu sour cream. You will just love these noodles. I want to get it all incorporated here. This is the pasta that's going to go under our mushroom stroganoff. I'm just mixing it up really well so all the sauce gets incorporated. I love the sour cream and this noodle dish so much that I've eaten it as a main course. With a salad or with soup, it is delicious. It can stand by itself. The noodles for our mushroom stroganoff. Now, stroganoff is usually sliced beef in a mushroom and a sour cream sauce, served over rice or noodles. Beef Stroganoff was the prize-winning recipe created for a cooking competition held in the late 1800s in Russia. The chef who devised the recipe worked for the Russian diplomat, Count Stroganov. We're going to start by making a marinade with white wine, tarragon, soy sauce, a few turns of the fresh black pepper, some prepared mustard, and olive oil. I'm going to whisk this together. We're only going to use part of it to marinate the tofu, and then I'm going to reserve the rest and it'll go into the main stroganoff dish. A little vegetable stock, a 1/2 teaspoon of lemon juice gives it a nice little kick. Then I'm going to measure out 2 tablespoons of the marinade. This is the marinade for our tofu. The tofu's been draining for over an hour. You want to get most of the moisture out of it. I'm going to cut it in about 1/2-inch pieces across, then turn it, and then turn it the 3rd way, and that 1/2-inch will now give us little cubes. This tofu, whoa, I guess that was enough, is then going to go into the marinade. And we will bake it until all of the moisture disappears, goes into the tofu, evaporates. Just going to stir it. And put the tofu in a 1/2 hotel pan with all of the marinade, that means all of the flavor, so that each element in our dish is going to be very tasty all by itself, and then put together it will be dynamite. The oven's preheated to 350 degrees, and I'm going to bake the tofu in the oven until all of the marinade is absorbed into it for great flavor. I'm going to check this in 30 minutes, but it'll take at least 45 minutes and maybe up to an hour for all the marinade to be absorbed. Now we're going to make the stroganoff. I have the pan a little preheated. Going to add some olive oil. We'll add a little bit of olive oil before each vegetable. Going to turn that to high now. And we'll start by sauteing our onions. White onions. You could use yellow. I wouldn't use the red, though. They're a little bit sweeter. And the celery that I've cut on a diagonal. We're going to let this saute for a little bit. Now, the next thing we add is going to be mushrooms. I used all the white button mushrooms, but if you prefer, you could use 1/2 of the white mushrooms and 1/2 shiitake mushrooms. If you use shiitake, be sure to just cut off that stem. You could use it in a sauce, but don't use it in this dish because it's a little bit woody tasting. Or you could even use another mushroom of your choice. This should saute about 5 minutes. And while this is sauteing, I am going to add to the marinade that we had used to bake the tofu. I'm going to take this marinade, put it in a 4-cup measure. We're going to add a little bit of soy milk to this. I want to just get out all this liquid because that's our flavor. Going to add the soy milk. A little bit of nutmeg. Then I'm going to add enough water to equal 3½ cups. Right now, it's at about 2½ cups. This is going to be our gravy. We're going to make the gravy right in the pan here. Okay. The onions and the celery are cooking. Going to add a little bit more oil for our mushrooms. This is extra virgin olive oil I'm using. I always use. And it's organic, of course. Now our mushrooms. Going to add some tarragon. This is fresh tarragon that I'm using today. At home, I always dry my own spices or dry my own fresh herbs. And here's how I do that. I'll take the herb, just rinse it under running water. Then I take a rubber band, cut it with the scissors, and I tie the stem of the herbs with the cut rubber band. Then I hang the herbs from the handle of one of my kitchen cabinets. As they're drying, they are beautiful. They look as pretty as cut flowers, and they smell nice too. Can start to smell these mushrooms already. Going to mix this all together. Now we're going to make a gravy right here in this pot. First, by adding whole wheat pastry flour. Now this is flour with the bran and germ intact. But it's a pastry flour, which has a lot less gluten than a bread flour. And that means it'll be a lighter or more delicate gravy. It's not going to be a thick, heavy gravy. And we'll just let that brown up a little bit. Then I'm going to add a little bit of salt and pepper. Just a couple of smidgens of salt. And a few turns of pepper. You probably don't know this, but the word, because I didn't know it, but the word pep comes from pepper. And it figuratively means spirit or energy. You're going to feel more peppy as you eat less meat. Okay, this is looking good. The ingredients are not browning, but they are sauteing. The onions are getting translucent. I'm going to be slowly adding this marinade mixed with the soy milk. This will make our gravy. I don't want to put it all in at once. The flour that I had added might bunch up then and get lumpy. I'm going to add it, and as it gets absorbed, I will add a little bit more, always making sure that I'm not making this dish too thin, that I'm not making the gravy too thin. And I can start adding it a little bit faster because it is looking like gravy. This is the main body of the stroganoff. It's going to go over those wonderful sour cream noodles. And since each of the components of this dish taste delicious all but by themselves, put together it's just wonderful. And you'll be amazed at how rich this tastes. And it is very flavorful. Almost done with this gravy. And you can see that the celery has kept its bright green color. The mushrooms, because we cut them the long way and not across, each little slice that we have here looks like a mushroom. Stayed very attractive. Let's get all that flavor out. Just going to heat it up a little bit more. I'm going to cover this stroganoff and keep it heated for about 5 minutes or until the gravy thickens up. Now that all the marinade's been absorbed by the tofu, we're going to add it back to our main stroganoff dish, which is really cooking up there. That is the last part of it. We're going to be serving this over the whole wheat noodles. You're going to love it. Now I'm going to make the beet salad, which goes wonderfully with the tofu stroganoff. It's one of the beloved vegetables of Russia. You steam the beets first, anywhere from 25 to 40 minutes. Just stick a fork in it a little bit to be sure that it's tender but not falling apart when you take them out. Never peel the beets before you steam them, because after they're cooked, it's so easy to just peel that skin off under running water. Also, be sure to leave a good inch, at least an inch of the stems attached if you're slicing the greens off of it to eat later. And be sure to leave a little bit on the other end as well. That will keep the juices inside and it won't stain the other food, and it keeps all the nutrients inside also. But at this point, I'm going to cut the ends off, and I'm going to cut the beet into wedges by cutting it into halves. And you can do that no matter what size the beets are. Cut it in half. And keep cutting it in half until they're the size you want. Since this beet is small, since these beets are small today, I just had to make 4 pieces out of the beet. Going to add it to the beets that I had cut earlier. And you should know that the pigment that gives beets their rich color is also a powerful cancer-fighting agent. Now, beets are very sweet, and that's why they are so great in a tangy vinaigrette dressing, like we're going to be making. First, I'm going to add the lemon juice. Freshly squeezed, a little extra virgin olive oil, some sea salt, and freshly minced garlic. I've already layered some arugula on the platter, and if you haven't yet tried arugula, now is your chance. It has dark green jagged leaves, as you can see, and a peppery flavor, and yet it has a very delicate texture. It's quite wonderful. I'm going to mix just half of this marinade over the beets, because I want to be sure to leave some to put over the arugula, which will make a delicious salad. So here's the beets. And I'm just sure to get all this garlic out. I don't want to leave any behind. And then I'm just going to drizzle the rest of this vinaigrette dressing over the arugula. There's a salad I know you will love. Okay, I said we'd make apricot bars, and I keep my promises. This is a sweet that won't give you and your children a sugar high and then a drop in energy after the lift wears off. I started by taking a cup of apricots, covering them with a cup of water, covering the pot. As soon as this pot came to a boil, I turned the flame off. They're going to sit there and that liquid will get even sweeter. This is a 3-layer apricot bar, and the first layer is the crust, which I'm going to make in the food processor. So we will start with non-hydrogenated margarine, adding whole wheat pastry flour, a pinch of sea salt, got to get that out with my finger, and then some toasted date sugar. Now, date sugar is more a food than a sweetener, as it's just dehydrated, toasted, and ground dates. But it has that crunch that we're used to with sugar. So it's a very nice sweetener. Just going to pulse this. I don't want to overbeat it. While that's pulsing, now I've already pre-sprayed the pan that this crust is going to bake in. How I know that this has pulsed enough is that the mixture gets a little bit darker, and that indicates that the non-hydrogenated margarine has been worked into it. I am just going to spread this in an 8-inch square pan, and then we will put it in the oven for just 15 minutes. I'm going to spread this out, and I think I'll use my fingers. Hold it down so it doesn't clatter too much. This looks like a thin crust, but it'll rise a little bit in the baking. Even though it doesn't have a leavening agent in it, it'll rise a little bit. And then we'll be putting on 2 other layers. So just to smooth it down with a spatula along the edges. And I'm going to bake this crust at 350 for 15 minutes. Well, our crust is baked for 15 minutes. I'm going to take it out of the oven. The crust is the first layer. We'll have 2 more layers to add to it. We'll start with the apricots that are softened now. And notice that they're dark in color. If you're buying a bright orange apricot that's very, very soft, it means it's been sulfured. And we don't need to be eating sulfur. I'm just going to spread these apricot strips on the crust for our second layer. And try to get them evenly distributed. And for our next layer, we're going to make a cake. It's actually a cake that we'll be laying on top of this. I'm going to start by measuring the apricot water, and I will add enough soy milk to it to make a total of 3/4 of a cup. And it's pretty close to that already. Very good. I'm going to put it in the Cuisinart along with maple syrup. A little bit of vanilla. And 1/3 of a cup of tofu. We're going to blend this. Now I've already gathered together our dry ingredients, which is walnuts, whole wheat pastry flour, a baking powder without alum, a little bit of sea salt, and some cinnamon. Cinnamon is a wonderful spice to use whenever it's appropriate in a dish, because studies have been showing us that as little as a 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon a day will lower cholesterol significantly. I'm going to add the wet to the dry. Stir it very little until all the dry ingredients are just moistened. When I graduated from college, I lived in Berkeley, California for a while, and there was a bakery that I used to love to go to, and I would buy cookies there, and they always had a little sign by the cookies that said, "We use only unbleached flour." And I remember thinking, who cares? Now I care. So this is moistened, and it is the 3rd layer in our apricot bars, which I will pour over. And each layer has such a different texture. The crust, because we put ground up dates or date sugar in it, is very crunchy, almost sugar-like. The next layer is the apricots, which are soft and are chewy now that we've cooked them. And the 3rd layer is very cake-like. Well, the oven's at 350 degrees, so we are now going to bake the apricot bars for 25 minutes. And they're well worth the wait. Well, hope you enjoyed today's Russian-inspired comfort food recipes. Our dairy and meat-free stroganoff with whole wheat noodles and a delicious beet salad. And of course, our bursting with flavor apricot dessert. 3 great ideas your family will want to revisit again and again. They're sure to help you serve up good taste and good health day after day, whether you're used to eating vegetarian or just beginning to try new ways of eating without meat. Once again, it is great to be with you, and here's hoping you'll enjoy your increased energy and well-being as you go veggie. Until next time, I'm Kay Stepkin.